Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Travel webinar. My name is Christina Brazier, and I'm Operations Director of the Travel Vault. I'm joined today by our regular panelists, Matt Purser and Adam Pennyfather of Travel Trade Consultancy, who will be providing us with a general update on industry matters, including details of the recent extension on the furlough scheme. We'll also be joined later in the webinar by Andy Freeth, who's been a key figure in the travel industry for some time and will be sharing some valuable insights from his own experience. As usual, all attendees will be muted for a better sound quality, but we welcome any questions on the Q&A function throughout the webinar. So firstly, it's been an eventful couple of weeks since our last webinar. No sooner had we given you an update on the new job support scheme when we were plunged into another lockdown and travel was subject to further restrictions. However, the news of a vaccine has been welcomed this week and saw an immediate impact on share prices of some travel companies. There's obviously been some caution subsequently thrown at this news in terms of getting it final approval and the timescales to roll it out before we can start to return to normality. But there is hope that this will increase the public's confidence to start booking their holidays again soon. However, unfortunately, the impact of the pandemic has already been devastating for many travel businesses, and the uncertainty and increased risks have been a significant concern for insurers. On previous webinars, we've discussed that many insurers have reduced or removed cover across the travel sector and how this caused significant issues in September for ABTA and ATOL renewals. Having weathered that storm, we were really sorry to hear news yesterday that our main insurer, Zurich, plans to exit the UK travel market from the 1st of January 2021. This will therefore impact the financial failure insurance policies that many of our members have in place, along with many travel bonds. Normally, in these circumstances, we would have other insurers that we could approach for alternative cover, but the market has been decimated by the pandemic. We're working with industry partners to establish whether new insurers may come into the market, but I'm sure you'll appreciate that this is an extremely difficult climate, and we want to be honest and open that we think that this will be challenging in the short term. If you're one of our members with a Zurich policy in place, you should have received an email from us last night. Firstly, we obviously want to reassure you that your current policy will remain valid and will continue to run until the expiry date, and that you should continue to report your bookings to us in the usual way to ensure that your customers are protected. We're obviously really sorry that this situation creates even more uncertainty at this time, and our main priority will be to contact all members and applicants individually to discuss the implications of this decision and help you through the next steps. We want to tailor our advice to your particular circumstances, so please bear with us whilst we go through this. Our members renew their policies at different times of the year, so we'll contact those closest to their renewal date first. If you're not due to renew until later in 2021, there's no need to worry at this point, and we'll be in touch in due course. We've spoken to ABTA and the CAA and explained that all policies are still valid until their expiry and that customers remain protected. We are, of course, happy to take questions on this, but first, Matt, as many of our members know, you're a director of both Travel Trade Consultancy and Travel Vault. Is there anything you'd like to add on what I've said?
Well, I think, as you say, the industry has been hit, ever since we went into lockdown in March, from travel restrictions through to lockdowns that we've had, but we've seen it sort of suppliers over that period, their appetite diminishing over that period. So we've seen it from merchant providers. So we've seen them pull out of the market en masse, not really looking at individual cases. We've seen it with bond providers as well. We've seen it with supplier failure insurance as well. And unfortunately, that means that all of the solutions that are under the package travel regulations in terms of trust accounts, bonding routes, and financial failure insurance are all being hit by this at the moment. So as you said, we are trying to work on it and trying to find a solution. But yeah, what we can do is to work with people individually around how their circumstances can be affected by this. We've seen some other changes in the industry as well. People who have decided off the back of COVID, people like James Villas and Villa Plus, who have decided actually they're just not going to offer flights anymore as part of their offering. They've gone to Villa only, pretty much predominantly on that. I assume it's off the back of how airlines have acted in this situation and tried to get refunds. And so, yeah, it's, you know, we've said it before, it's unprecedented times, and we're trying to, everyone's trying to adapt to it.
Absolutely. And obviously we have a number of members who we need to communicate. So, I mean, kind of reiterating, really, we will be in touch with everyone. But please bear with us. As I said, you know, we have ATOL members, ABTA members, some that just have cover for non-air packages. So each individual circumstances is different. And again, just to reiterate, if you're not due to renew until later in 2021, there is really no immediate cause for concern. But we did want to be open and honest and transparent, because we felt that, you know, this news does kind of come out in the industry, and we wanted you to hear it from us, basically. Matt, has there been any other kind of news in the travel industry at the moment? Any other updates that our members should be aware of at this time?
No, I mean, I know Adam's obviously going to touch upon the furlough scheme and things like that. I mean, we have seen some positive news, you know, with the news of you know, maybe a vaccine being available, that share prices, as you say, increased off the back of that. And that's followed up with bookings. You know, you know, from what data we've seen is that there was sort of a spike with the Canaries when that came out of the quarantine. We've seen a spike in bookings following the news about a potential vaccine. So they are positive turns. But yeah, that doesn't mean that, you know, by any stretch of the imagination, we're going to go back to normal anytime soon. Yeah, that's all I really wanted to say, really. Okay.
Thank you, Matt. So Adam, if we can move on to you. Thank you for joining us today. As I said earlier, at our last webinar, you were presenting on the job support scheme, but I understand this has now been withdrawn as a result of the latest lockdown, and the original furlough scheme has therefore been extended. We've been through some of the main principles before, and I know a lot of our members have already used the furlough scheme, but what are the key points that we should all be aware of?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Hi everybody. As Chris just said, the job support scheme has been postponed, and although the furlough scheme, or the extension of that, in most parts remains largely the same, there are some changes. So I'll just take you through a few high-level bullet points, and then happy to take any questions from there, really. So the job retention scheme has been extended to the 31st of March and has actually been backdated to the 1st of November. So you could retrospectively agree to furlough employees from the 1st of November. The important point, if you do want to do that, is that by tomorrow you need to have an agreement in place. That's the 13th of November. You need to have a written agreement with your employees. The job retention bonus, which was originally planned for the end of January, is now postponed. We've been told there'll be a suitable incentive nearer the time, so we'll await that. The grant level for the furlough has increased back up to 80%. For those of you using the scheme, it would have dropped to 60% back in October. It's still at a maximum of £2,500 per employee, and the employer's NI and pension costs will not be covered. This is subject to a review in January, and so what I'm expecting is that, depending on the economic situation, there may be a tapering off, as we'd seen to date with that scheme, but more to be looked at come January. The scheme continues to be flexible, so employees can work part-time. They will be paid full pay for the hours that they do work, and then receive a furlough grant for the hours that are not worked. Employees do not have to be furloughed previously, so you can furlough new employees, and there's also no cap. So previously, when we've been through different iterations of the furlough scheme, you've seen caps on the numbers of employees you can claim for in any one period, but that is no longer in place. If you've made employees redundant, or they stop working for you on or after the 23rd of September, you can re-employ them and put them on furlough. This applies as long as the employee was employed and on your PAYE payroll before the 23rd of September. In terms of redundancy, if you've made employees redundant and they're currently serving their notice period, so in the month of November, you can continue to claim the furlough grant for November. The main point here, and we've seen quite a bit of noise about this, is that the government has said, or buried in the guidance, they've confirmed that this particular point is going to be reviewed and will change from the 1st of December. What I would say is that with the JSS original guidance, they had taken away that ability to claim a grant in the statutory notice period. And so I think, in my opinion, it will be likely we see something similar come the 1st of December. In terms of timing, there have been some slight changes. So for furlough claims up until the 31st of October, so under the previous version, you have until the end of this month, so the 30th of November, to make your claim. Moving forward, the mechanism and the timing largely remains the same. You can claim in advance, which I think is helpful. Claims will be paid 6 days post you're putting the claim in. One key change is that actually you only have until the 14th of the following month to make a claim for that month, and so there's a bit of a time stop there. And then from the 2nd of December, from December, HMRC are going to publish the names of the companies and the partnerships that are using the scheme. And that's it really for me, Chris, from a high level view.
Thank you. It's quite a lot to digest there. I understand that you've got an infographic on the TT website if anyone wants to have a look to kind of summarise those points. Is that right? Yeah,
we do try and put out as much content as possible. I think HMRC or government have got an infographic, but it's not quite that useful to look at. So I believe we've got one coming out. But equally, if anybody wants to get in contact, obviously there are quite a few different circumstances that we see, and everyone has kind of their own different questions to ask. So yeah, feel free to get in contact or look at the content we put out.
Thank you. And so obviously, as you've said, the government's going to be issuing more guidance over the coming weeks or months, but the scheme has been extended to the end of March, the 31st of March.
Yes, yeah, with the review come January, so just watch out for that. The further guidance, especially around this redundancy point, which I've seen in the travel press, that is expected late November, so we'll have more information on that.
Okay, thank you. And we'll aim to keep members updated as best we can when things get released. So we have had a question from one of our members. Thank you for that. The question is whether the insurer is going to consider refunding any of the premium deposit funds which have been paid this year if there's no real coverage or service. So I think we've covered this before on previous webinars, that unfortunately the insurer isn't able to refund any premium deposits over the year as a result of decrease in trading because of the pandemic. Obviously the minimum premium is there to cover their costs, and the decision that we've had from Zurich yesterday doesn't change that, unfortunately, because the policies will still exist for the policy term that's been agreed. So I mean, whilst we will do everything we can to kind of fight your cause and see whether we can claim any minimum premiums back, we cannot guarantee this, and the answer that we have had so far is unfortunately not. But we will obviously continue to liaise with them on that. Andy, thank you for joining us. Perfect timing. Before I come to our guest speaker, actually, I just wanted to let you know that our next webinar is on the 26th of November, and we'll be focusing on Brexit, just to make our lives even cheerier, and what the implications are for your business and what you should be doing to prepare. We'll be joined by Luke Golding, Senior Associate from Kemp Little Law Firm, as well as our colleagues from Travel Trade Consultancy. Lucy is going to post a link in the chat function, so please do click on this if you would like to join us. So moving to our guest speaker, Andy Freeth, welcome. Andy has been in the travel industry for some time now, having been a director of Travel 2 and Gold Medal, and more recently Chief Executive at If Only Holidays. Andy left that role earlier this summer, having grown the business and facilitating its acquisition by the Portman Travel Group. He's now non-executive director at two relatively new companies, Inspire My Holiday and FlexiReps. Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. you've always come across as a very positive voice in the industry, but the last 8 months must surely have even put you to the test. At the beginning of the pandemic, you were managing if only holidays through the crisis, and since then you've had a little bit of time to reflect. What are your thoughts on the industry's reaction to the pandemic and the potential recovery? I mean, that's a very open question, but let's start with that.
Yeah, first of all, thanks Christina, Lucy and team for having me along today. Hello everybody. I don't think I can actually see anybody, but I'm assuming there's some people there. Probably like me, randomly sat at home. I'm on my landing, which I've spent many an hour at since the start of this. But yeah, look, really interesting, an open question. I think, look, the most important skill that any leader of any business could have adopted during this pandemic is, you know, flexibility, agility, openness, authenticity, and accept that you've lost control. And I think that's probably been the hardest thing for, you know, I still speak to people that are running huge businesses, small businesses, you know, people still in the industry on a daily basis. And I think just having that control whipped away. And the other thing, travel, we wrote a blog on it fairly recently. Travel people, we're people. You know, we, generally speaking, we're quite outgoing. We like to go to conferences. We like to go and have fun. We like to travel and experience the destinations and products that we're selling. So I think it was really tough for leaders and teams because the control was whipped away, the fun was whipped away, and just dealing with this constant flow of rubbish stuff. And look, that does take its toll. You said at the outset, I'm quite positive. Look, I've had a few months of doing fun stuff, time with my family, holidays. I feel terrible talking to colleagues and friends that are still in the trenches, still fighting. But I think, yeah, the toughest thing has been, generally speaking, in our careers, there's a balance of, we have some good stuff going on and we have some bad stuff, and the good stuff normally outweighs it, but we've just had bad. So look, it's taking its toll on people mentally. Being at home, sat on, whether you're on your landing or in a nice kitchen or on a beanbag with a laptop on your lap, it's not really the environment that we thrive in. So yeah, look, it's been really tough for people, and you know, it's not really getting any easier. There are some positive signs that have come out in the recent weeks around, you know, a potential vaccine looking likely to be in the new year. Things that are going on with sort of airport testings and quarantines being reduced, but it's very difficult to have a spring of optimism if you're leading a business. You're looking at your balance sheet, which has been decimated. You don't really want to spend anything on marketing. So it's tough. Look, it's been really tough, but I do remain positive because I think it will over time recover. It'll be a slow recovery, but if everyone's in kind of that very much startup mode and ready to accelerate when the demand starts coming back, then I think strong businesses will survive and thrive post the pandemic. So I don't know if that answered the actual beginning question.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that's great. And do you think, you know, looking at how different operators have reacted, do you think some have fared better than others? Obviously, people have taken different approaches and reacted differently. What do you think has been the best approach, in your opinion?
I think the ones that moved fast enough to get into hibernation mode. At the time, you think it's just brutal. You know, you see huge swathes of people leaving businesses, and you think, oh my God, they could have hung on. And you know, even part of me was thinking, yeah, we went quite soft on the cost savings at If Only, but then they had to do it again later on because obviously it went on and on. So I think the people that were swift to completely wrap their arms around their cash position and protect that as much as they can, swift to cut the cost out, and quick enough to sort of hibernate. I think that's the word that I've heard from people that have done rather well, is hibernate, but also try and protect the relationship with your suppliers and your customers. I think people have come out really well that have continued to pay their suppliers, that have managed to get refunds to the customers when they've had it from suppliers. And I guess protecting those relationships, because they will be really important the other side, and people will remember, you know, they're going to remember how you dealt with them, how you communicated, you know, what you did with cash. Yeah, so I think, but there's been a balance. There's been, you know, because if we think of it in the steps of what's happened in the pandemic, it was get your customers home safely, get your team home safely, to furlough, not to furlough. And again, which was tricky because you've got all these customers that you need to deal with, yet you've got an advantage that you can take from the government cash. people have been protected and wrapped around with government loans, which are probably covering over a myriad of issues. Because one of the things that I'm surprised about, and I guess you guys might be, is how few failures there've been. There've been some high profile ones and some smaller, but I'm astonished there haven't been more. You know, most businesses don't have 12 months of working capital just sat in their bank with no income coming in. So I think, yeah, look, it's been brutal, you know, and I, as I say, I'm still speaking to lots of people that remains brutal at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you say about your time at If Only and kind of having to look at costs a second time. I think, you know, when we look back to March, none of us, well, most of us didn't expect it to go on this long, certainly. And I think, you know, there has been lots of additional planning being required over the last few months to keep, you know, on top of your costs and what you need to do to survive. I mean, a lot of our members have decided to pause their business and hibernate, as you say, and focus on that bounce back. I mean, what's your advice on how best to prepare for this? I mean, you mentioned there about relationships with suppliers. I think obviously that's one key learning point from the pandemic.
Yeah, I think again, I speak to tons of people through the couple of roles that you mentioned, so I'm very much in touch. And I think a lot of people have focused on ensuring that when they come out of this, they're the most operationally efficient as they possibly can be. Because when you've not got when you're not on the wheel running, you've got time to step back a little bit and take a closer look at your efficiency. Lots of people, I've got friends that run tech companies, they've got really busy where people that have got some spare cash or the access to funding to look at their IT, just to get that. So when you do come back, you don't make the same mistakes that you've been making for the last couple of years. And look, we will have all made them, and If Only we were inefficient in several areas, but we immediately put together a project plan, which the guys are still working on now. I'm still in touch with those guys, to get that kind of operational efficiency. And also to think about, you know, your sort of marketing channels and you can still stay in touch with your customers. I would encourage people, even not in a sales way, to stay in touch with their customers, not necessarily pushing out offers or pushing out deals, but just communicating, growing your social presence, improving your digital activity, all of the things that, you know, we all do it when you're in a business and you're on the wheel and things are going, you don't really get a lot of chance to sort of stand back. So I would be sort of encouraging, even now, there's, you know, it's still plenty of time where we're not going to be seeing swathes of fresh bookings come in. And even if your business is paused, you know, I suspect amongst your group of people on here that run all these businesses, it's a good time to have a bit of headspace to be able to go, right, what we're going to do when we bounce back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, none of us have a crystal ball, but you know, what's your opinion on the next 6 months in terms of travel coming back, and also the opinion of the people you're speaking to, as you say? I mean, is there optimism, or are people resigned to another very difficult few months ahead?
Yeah, look, this week has seen a real difference, you know, because people's phones start ringing and people's, you know, when you see mainstream operators like the likes of Jet2 have just launched out of Bristol, putting 450,000 of capacity out of there, you know. So if you're a retailer in that region, you've probably gone, oh, this is exciting, this is good, we've got more stuff to sell and on new destinations, etc. I think there's a real mixed bag of a sense of recovery. I think the government coming out with the end of March furlough is kind of signaling to everybody there's probably not going to be a lot happening between now and March. And if you're a business that relies going east and you're very much a winter business, then you're probably going to be quite concerned that you're going to miss this winter. You've got to get through next summer and then into another winter. But there are other people that are, you know, fairly optimistic that we get to December. There's talk of travel corridors already. I think even this morning there was someone chatting around opening up different travel corridors in December. So look, probably like everybody else, it is almost impossible to guess and forecast. And I think CFOs and FDs have really earned their crust in this last few months, because all they've had to do is forecast, reforecast, plan. Given a more direct answer from a personal opinion, I think the winter's going to be pretty bleak. And I think hopefully from April onwards, if there's a relatively effective vaccine in place. Consumers have only got so much left in them to be told what to do. You know, all of us now, we're technically in lockdown. I can tell you now, apart from not going to the pub, which for me is a disaster, I don't feel like I'm in lockdown at all. My kids are still at school. You know, we're still going out to the park when they could. You know, they'll be home in an hour. You might hear something actually. I don't know. If you hear noise, it's because the kids have come home. But we'll be jumping on our bikes and going out. It's only really we're not in lockdown, and I think the public, there's such a demand. I went on holiday to Kos at the school half term, so the last week of October. The flight was completely full. The hotel was full to the capacity it could be with COVID sort of safety restrictions. And from chatting to people, you know, chatty fella, and my wife hates it really. She doesn't like me talking to people on holiday, but I always do. And people there just want to get away. People just want to get away. Speaking to our neighbours, they're desperate to go on a trip and on a break. I guess the scary bit that sort of you layer over that is the huge amounts of unemployment, the huge amounts of businesses that are affected that won't have the sort of cash, you know, hairdressers, builders, you know, there's a whole swathe of people that's income's been impacted. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think bleak winter, but some signs of recovery for the summer, hopefully.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think the people that we speak to as well, you know, there is a lot of pent-up demand from consumers, and I think it's just when they have the confidence to book, they will do. So yeah, there's definitely optimism, but as you say, it's just a question of when. So I mean, we're kind of keen to give some practical advice to some of our members a lot of your experience has been around working with travel agents. I mean, first of all, do you think the pandemic's going to have a significant impact on the role of travel agents? Yeah,
look, I think, you know, there's some scary stats that are being published on how many travel agents are going to be left. But, you know, the reality is for most of those businesses, the majority of high street travel agents, I'm talking about independent ones, not the likes of Flight Centre, STA, and some of those sort of bigger ones, or Trail Finders, etc. The smaller sort of Bob travelling Matlock, it's normally him and his wife or his daughter, or, you know, mother and son and one or two other employees. I think they've been able to hibernate pretty well. They'll have done well from the government support in, you know, not paying rates, etc. And so I think most will have been able to hibernate. It's whether they decide during this time to go off and do something else. But the ones that are still here, I think the consumer has had such, not poor treatment, but, you know, getting through to OTAs will have been incredibly difficult. And a communication directly. My wife's actually a travel agent. She works down the hallway in the spare bedroom, which is actually set up as an office. But so for the home working guys, most of them do it as a kind of, it's a second income to the house. And so they're just not doing anything. They're looking after the kids. They're, you know, or helping out or launching other new businesses. But they'll all come back strong, and I think the consumers will be, there's going to be so much advice needed. There was always advice before, but so much more is going to be needed now on, do I need to have a test? Don't I need to have a test? What do we want to get there? What's going to be open? What facilities? So I think consumers are more likely to go back to travel agents, either on the high street or at home, or to niche operators where they know they can get hold of somebody and they're not part of a kind of big mass market. But then I'll fly in the face of that theory in that, you know, there are businesses that have treated customers really rather well with the flexibilities around refunds, around amendments, around change. And I think that's going to, the biggest change I see coming is in the whole flow of consumer cash between consumer, retailer, operator and supplier. All that's going to very, very likely going to change because travel agents have been having to pay commissions back. You know, the airlines are, the airline bit is the bit that sticks in my throat really, because that's the bit that has caused the biggest problems, but no one's got a solution for.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing actually over the last few months on our webinars has been one of the significant issues that people have found is getting that money back from the airline.
Yeah, but I think for the retailers and for you know, for travel agents as well, sorry, for travel agents and tour operators, is that relationship's important, which you can still work on now. Soft communications, calling, how are you getting on, that softer side of things. You know, trust in you as a business that you've communicated effectively. They're massive. The relationship, trust, consistency as well will be very important.
Thank you. And a lot of our members actually don't use travel agents at the moment. I mean, what would be your advice to anyone who's thinking of engaging agents into their kind of bounce back plans?
Look, I think as a channel, look, you've got a lot of challenges with working with travel agents. If you've never worked with them before, entering into that space, it's fairly straightforward if you've done it and you've experienced working in the B2B environment. Some of the big challenges that people have is who do they speak to? You know, if they want to be on sale with Bob's Travel in Matlock, or who owns Bob? How does Bob pay me? All that kind of stuff. So working with the trade, the key, the most important thing is building the relationships, building the trust. You know, you can't just be a faceless brand. You need to get people out to go and see them and to meet them and to promote your business. And also consider that one of the biggest challenges really is the price point, because B2C brands generally enjoy the tour operator margin and the retail margin.
Yeah.
You know, so you talk to businesses that are making 20-25% of margin. Well, you've got to give some of that up to the travel agent, whilst not increasing the price to the consumer. And that price point always seems to be, for people that are B2C going into B2B, seems to be the challenging thing. So I think accepting that you're going to make less margin and not own the full end-to-end customer is probably the starting point. And then, you know, you're going to need to, if you've never done it, you need to bring someone in, because relationships really do matter. And
that kind of brings us on, I think, a little bit nicely to one of your new companies that you're non-exec director for, FlexiReps. That kind of offers, not that I'm obviously using this as an opportunity for you necessarily to promote that, but I think it does fit in nicely. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that business and why it was set up over the summer and what it does?
Yeah, look, I do feel weird doing a shameless pitch, but look, it was set up essentially because B2B businesses were all making their sales teams redundant because they don't need someone driving around the country visiting travel agents. And I thought, God, this is awful for these people. But at the same time, there's going to become a point, and we're not far off it, I don't think, where they're going to need those people back, but not have the strength of balance sheet to bring them back full time. So it was set up to, well, three key reasons really, is to try and keep some of that talent in the industry, so they don't end off drifting off working for Ferrero Rocher or Wrigley's or whatever. You know, they drift into some other set. We want to try and retain the talent. Also give brands a flexible solution to getting out to travel agents. And we're also, you know, because the industry is in such a pickle, we're going to give some of the profits to App to Lifeline, the charity. It did change a little bit after we've launched it, and we've ended up, I can't because I'm still very restricted from leaving, but we've got teams of people that can, if there are businesses on here that are working with consumers but want to work with the trade, we have set up we've got a team of people that can make that happen, that can kick off the relationships, that consult on putting together all the commercial terms and what the expectations are, because that's another thing that people, you don't realize how demanding travel agents can be and what they want. Mm-hmm. And I guess we've got the tools there to sort of share that knowledge with people to make sure that, you know, they're getting the marketing material. It's an easy booking process. The payment processes are easy. There's conflict resolution if there's any issues. So yeah, but look, it's I'm delighted with how it's gone. It's run by a lad called Craig Davidson, who's, you know, cracking guy. He's actually, lucky bugger, he's in Tenerife this week because we've done a deal with a hotel chain in Tenerife to be their UK sales agent. So he's there sunning himself. He said it's, you know, it's like anyone that goes on these bloody trips. It's a familiarization. I saw a picture of his wife with a beer at 11 o'clock yesterday morning. He's absolutely having a holiday and pretending it's work. It's not funny.
That sounds lovely. I'm very jealous.
I'm hearing very grey and bleak Leeds in Yorkshire.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're also a non-executive director for Inspire My Holiday as well. I mean, as a non-executive director, just in general, what does that role entail?
Well, look, I'm going to be getting back into. I'm not going to give too much away. I'm going to be getting back into employment. You know, I did these things to help some people out, people I knew. And I'll tell you what sort of I think I've managed to do for these guys. It's not a route that I'm going to spend my career. I actually think when I'm a lot older, I know I'm still quite young, 45. I think maybe when I'm older, it's something that I'd like to do. And there was a point a few months ago where I thought, do I go down this route and do a few more of these and just do that? But I think I need a full challenge, so I'm going to do that. But look, I think if people on here are considering bringing non-exec directors in, I would definitely encourage it, because not because I'm doing it and because I think I'm ace. There's lots of talented people in lots of different fields, but they can open doors. They've got a different viewpoint to yours. They can draw on experiences from the past. I've been in businesses, I've been in startups that grew significantly. I've been in big private equity-backed businesses. I've been in small family businesses, and you get different experiences from that. And quite a lot of people in business, they do their own thing and they do it really well. But then having a different point of view come in. I think it's also useful to maybe rubber stamp an idea that you've got. So what I've been doing with Craig and with Ollie at Inspire My Holiday, they'll come up with an idea and they go, well, what do you think? And I can, from my experience, go, well, I've done something like that in the past and we made a mistake on it, so maybe do it this way. And you learn, we've all, me included, Christ, I've made lots of mistakes and learned lots over a long time at different parts of the journey, whether you're cash strapped. I mean, when I started at Travel 2, we were losing fortunes. We had a debt ledger of 13 million quid. We had fires going all over, and you learn lots of different things in those environments. And if I went back in all of the different jobs I've done with what I knew now, oh my God, we'd get there faster, we'd get there easier, we'd make far less mistakes. But yeah, the non-exec role, it's also, I think, being a leader in a business, and I've almost become a little bit of an agony aunt to some colleagues in the industry, in really big businesses as well, where when you lead a business, it's bloody lonely, because you can't moan down, as in to your team. Not that I'm saying that your team are below you, but you can't moan to your team, because that's just not cool. It's really not great sense of leadership. So you've got no one to moan to, or to, share how tough it is. It can be dark, it can be cold. I don't think Martin's on this call, but he'd get it from me actually. But you need either non-execs or mentors or people that you can sometimes just vent. I've spoken to several leaders over recent months who've just gone, they've got on a Zoom with me or whatever, and it's gone, mate, this is just an absolute nightmare. There's no one else they can say that to, but a non-exec, you can, because they're kind of impartial. They're quite often probably more relaxed because they've not got the day-to-day grind of running a business. And I felt completely differently when I came out of If Only. I've then, because the team there are friends, right? And the Redmond who bought it, I'm really close to. I can even chat to those guys from my experience, but in a more positive way, because I'm not in the thick of it, in the trenches. I'm 3 miles back going, go on, it's going to be all right. So yeah, I think non-execs do that, and they can give, can also give the brand a bit of a profile boost as well, because bringing someone in that's kind of known in that sector or an expert in that field, it can change the dynamics of the relationships with suppliers, customers, and your teams as well.
Yeah, I think when someone mentioned to me about a non-executive director, it kind of conjured up images of a large company, but it's not necessarily for just the larger businesses. It can be small, as you say, startup, any size, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and look, the other thing is, generally speaking, and again, I'm not pitching it because it's not somewhere I'm going to go now, but whatever I go into next, I'll definitely be bringing them in. And the other benefit, which I didn't I've got some notes here, so I keep glancing down. It's really important to get across, is you build over the years, and everyone here will build a huge network. And over the years, I've met tons and tons of execs in most bits. So I'll know a digital marketing superstar, or I'll know a CFO, or I'll know someone that's really good at finance restructuring, or I'll know someone that's exited a business. And if I didn't know, so as a non-exec, and again, you're not embarrassed to say, Andy, what do you think about this? You go, look, I don't know, but give me a day or give me a couple of hours and I'll phone my mate X and I'll ask them their experiences. So you're just utilizing this whole other network of stuff, of people that have done great things. And as well as non-exec, I would also encourage people to have mentors. You know, I'm really, really fortunate that I come through the ranks at Air Tours, and then I worked in a startup, and again, PE backed. I've met so many great people, and the ones that I've been impressed with, I've kind of clung on to, that I can sort of call up and go, hey, listen, this is happening. What do you think? Or what did you do? Have you experienced this? So you just draw on, you know, I think a lot of leaders and owners of businesses almost don't feel embarrassed to ask for help, but they think, well, listen, this is my business. I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't need anybody's help. And I think a strength of a leader is to actually acknowledge, I don't know everything. You know, there's tons of times where I'll pick up the phone and ask somebody, or, you know, and I'm not afraid of people going, can't believe he didn't bloody know that. How's he had them jobs and he didn't even know that? Well, I'm all right with that. I'm all right with listening. I'm all right with learning. So yeah, try and pick a couple of mentors to run things by, because it definitely helps.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And I think you're right. I think, you know, a lot of us have found a lot of comfort in speaking to people through the pandemic, and not like, as you say, kind of like having a whinge to someone, or even just knowing that we're kind of all in this together. We're all experiencing the same thing, and, you know, bookings were down for everyone. It's not that some companies have been worse off than others. It's across the board. One of the things that we found, that obviously it's been extremely draining for a lot of people over, you know, I think we're, you know, 8 months now. How do you keep yourself motivated, and any teams that work for you? I mean, obviously you've been through a number of crises over the last, you know, 10, 15, 20 years. So you must be accustomed to kind of keeping everybody engaged and spirits high.
Yeah, well, normally you're in the office and you sense the tempo, and you know, as a leader of a business, you know, anyone that's worked with me will tell you, I'm very rarely sat in the corner in an office. I'm with the teams. I'm at the bank's desk and chatting, and that's the bit that I think most people have found most difficult, is when you're on a Zoom. You know, I was doing Zooms with 100 people on it at the start of it, and you're trying to look for signs of how people are feeling, and you know, but you can't really. I mean, you can see that I'm smiling now, but when you got tons of them on a screen, you can't really sense it. You hear it through more in smaller groups. But I think that the most important thing is consistency of leadership. I think, you know, because if people think you're going to be up or down one day, and also, you know, everyone knows that a fish smells from the head. So if you're down, if your head's down about absolutely everything all the time, that's going to happen to everybody else. So you've got to try and keep your own mood as positive as you can. And I took a decision on the 22nd of March. I've not watched the news, even to this day. I've not watched the news since the 23rd of March. So if you ask me what my coping mechanism was, it's don't watch the news. Make sure you get out for fresh air. Don't drink coffee after midday. So there's just little things that I did. But I've literally, I don't look at, I consume the news because people talk to you about it. I know if I'm in a tier 3 or, I hate all that, by the way. I hate all these new words that we're using, tiers and bubbles and all that nonsense. It drives me crazy. But yeah, I'm not on the news. But what I would say is to keep teams motivated, and people must have done this already, but, you know, redefine the KPIs, you know, because they can't be, you need to convert at 10% and you need to sell 100 grand this month, because they can't. Give people short-term, realistic goals and objectives and things to achieve, because, you know, there's been surveys done in the past that people's, you know, what they want out of their work is some sense of achieving, and people aren't really achieving much at the minute. But if you can say to somebody, you know, if they used to do 20 bookings a month, listen, if you did one this month, happy days, and you get a little pat on the back, is that try and find the good stuff that people are doing and celebrate those really small successes, because they will be happening. There will be really small things, but yeah, your mood and your demeanor is the most important. You don't need to be skipping and dancing and smiling when everything's going terrible, but you can't. I've seen people that get on a call and go, it's another shit day, isn't it? Well, it is, but your team don't need to hear that from you. You've got to just try and stay as upbeat as you can. And I did throughout, but mainly from not watching the news. That had a big changed me completely.
Yeah, I think a lot of us stopped watching, particularly the bulletins, the government bulletins every day. I think that became very demotivating. We've had a question actually from one of our members. So they run a mountain bike holiday company in France and Italy, and they're just about to acquire a small UK-based company, so they have a domestic product as well. They could really do with some help from a non-executive to help with Europe and UK stuff going forwards. Any advice on where to look?
Oh, crikey. I mean, most people, I think, start within their network, because it's much better bringing in someone that's been recommended. So look, if you want to send me, connect on LinkedIn or something, send it to me and we'll share it on LinkedIn, and you'll find people that way. That's obviously a very niche product, which should do quite well actually. In the current climate, that's open, it's fresh air, it's so I think it's a great product that should do well. But yeah, through your network, and I'm a fan of LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan of it. I think you find all sorts on there. But yeah, if you've not got it within your network, then I'm happy to share with mine, or speak to other people. I wouldn't go, because that's it's very specialist. But the first thing, if we just step back a little bit, is where do you want them to add value? I suspect, know lots about mountain bikes. I suspect you know lots about the destination. So what are you trying to achieve? Do you want to work with retailers? Do you want to scale up online? So just think I think with non-execs, there are generalists, but I would try and be specific on the exact skill set that you want, because that will narrow the field down. And then, you can obviously then draw on people's experiences. But I'm happy to help whoever that is, share it through my network and see if there's anyone that has the time available.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you so much. It's been really interesting chatting to you. One final question. You talked a little bit about, obviously, you're kind of keeping your options open, a couple of options. Can I assume you're staying in the travel industry? Yeah,
look, I actually can't say, because I've not finalised it, but I will. I'll be in the travel industry in a full-time executive role in January. So I've got another couple of months or month and a half, sadly sat at home. This isn't the way you want to spend any kind of gardening leave. You want to be out in the sunshine or out on holiday or something. But
now the summer's over, nobody wants to be on garden leave or furlough. That's right. Yeah,
terrible timing really. But yeah, no, it will be in the travel industry. A new exciting role, which I'll put on LinkedIn and people can see all about.
Absolutely. And we've had a couple of people actually say that it would be great to get in touch with you outside of the webinar. So I think LinkedIn sounds like the best way to do that then, does it?
Yeah, connect on there. But if you're not on there, people can just drop me a note. I don't know if you want to share my contact details after Christina.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, happy to get in touch and offer free advice and help, tips.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. As I said, it's been really interesting. So really appreciate that. Some really practical tips on there, as always. Good to hear your thoughts as well. So thank you. I've got a couple of questions for Adam. Actually, you're free to stay on the webinar or leave as you wish, Andy. If you've got other things. So, but you may be interested. You never know.
Yeah, let's see what the question is, and whether it inspires me to stay. I'm sure Adam will smash the answer.
It's finance, so yeah, who knows. But the first question we've got, Adam, is: are you aware of any travel industry specific funding currently available, or which will become available during this period? I think you talked about some local government funding possibly on the last webinar.
Yes, yeah, I think if you worth having a look at that. I think it's quite difficult from a travel perspective. We had seen people obtain grants, but it was really down to the definitions of the local authorities. So I would say check your local authority website, see what their definitions are and whether that applies. Other than that, it's back to kind of job retention scheme, or CBILS or bounce back, unfortunately, at this stage.
Okay, thank you. And just back to the furlough scheme as well. A question: as a company director paying myself the minimum salary, will I be eligible for furlough? I missed out last time due to the date of RTI submission. did you say, Adam, if a company furloughs, they will not be eligible for any grants as well? Sorry, that's 2 questions.
Is it 2 questions? I thought it was only 1, but in terms of the furlough claim, if you missed out last time, as long as you'd made an RTI submission between March and October, then you will qualify for this new version.
Okay, great, thank you. So thank you very much to our panelists for joining us, and also to all of our attendees. Thank you for joining us and for the questions. Don't forget, our next webinar will be on the 26th of November, which will be focusing on Brexit. So if you haven't already registered on the link from Lucy, then we'll send round details early next week. So thank you everyone, and have a good afternoon.